This is Roger Stone for American Sovereign Bullion. Since 2020, the U.S. dollar has lost over 20% of its purchasing power. Meanwhile, gold continues to rise. Call 844-272-2428 or go to asbgold.com now to get your free gold and silver guide and learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver delivered to your door or held in a gold IRA today. So go to asbgold.com now. Don't wait for the markets to drop. That's asbgold.com.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi.
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
We are going to go to the conference line and speak with someone I've come to know and admire in the short time we've been together, Father Peter Purpura, who is the Chancellor of the Brooklyn Diocese, a chaplain at FDNY, pastor of Lady of Hope in Middle Village, Queens. Father, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy. Yes.
Let's talk about this recent appointment. What does it mean to be Chancellor of the Diocese?
Well, it's one of these things that had an original purpose envisioned by the church, but then it's developed. So essentially, it's the caretaker of kind of the documents of the church. So you're almost like an ecclesiastical notary, but in the historical evolution of that role, it's taken on many different forms. So you touch a lot of different aspects of the church, a lot of legal matters, both internally and externally. So it exposes you to kind of a broad expanse of the life of the church.
Now, he's got me inspired here. What kind of documents? What are some of those documents? Can you talk about them? Is okay?
Sure. I mean, it could be something as simple as the appointment of a pastor. But really, archives are meant to be kind of a historic record of the life of a church. So it's safekeeping all of those documents from appointments to official communications to certain decrees, permissions related to marriage, permissions related to the other sacraments. So one of the things the church does well, I believe, is the keeping of records. Obviously, the most important being the sacramental records, but there's a lot of others that we keep.
Right. Well, when you say keeping of documents, I think immediately of historical documents, that you're responsible for over time. But this is really administrative within the practices of the church, yes?
It is. When the Diocese of Brooklyn was created in 1853, so, we have documents even from before that. Our first Catholic parish in Brooklyn was founded in 1822. Before that, the Catholics had to cross the river on Sunday morning to go to Lower Manhattan. So really, the life of the church beginning in 1822.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. He's got me intrigued here. I'm already seeing Nicolas Cage, and he's moving through a scene in a movie, and he's got to speak to Father Pete here about a special document that goes back to 1800s. What kind of incidents around documents can you recall being told, or maybe happen? Well, it wouldn't happen on your watch because you just took that over. But in the past, what kind of incidents have taken place where this keeping of documents has been so important?
Well, in these days, there's a lot of legal matters, right? That you could think of something as simple as records of schools, right? And which we keep. Attendance records. 50 years later, there could be a matter where you want to be able to confirm that a student was in a school 50 years ago on the day they said they were.
Wow.
So things like that are quite common. Yeah.
Could you pull out the record of A.R. Bernard and just see what comes up on that? You were talking, I thought to myself, sometimes we're the Kleenex generation. We take things, we just throw them, toss them away. But I think back the cards that we received from, our kids, our parents. There are documents, family documents, that we try to preserve, to look back. We look at those pictures. I remember there was a rabbi in Brooklyn, Harry Halpern. He said, if you lose a wallet, you're ready to accept the loss of money and the credit cards, but you want those pictures desperately returned because they recall special moments with special people. Of course, today, digitally, things are preserved in a different fashion. But there are things that we need to hold close to us and to remember the people who really meant so much to us, who sent us all kinds of notes, and other people, not just family members, but, letters from individuals who took the time to write something that was very, very meaningful for us. So we don't lightly take documents, and that's why I guess each one of us is a chancellor in our own particular family settings.
Yeah, interestingly
All
said.
right. Talk about Easter. Talk about Easter, obviously, from your particular view, Catholic, Christian, but also there are many people listening, around the country who are not all Christian. Give us the particular and the universal meaning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting the time of year that Easter is placed, right? So it's at a time where there's rebirth happening around us. We can kind of perceive in the natural world new life. And on the supernatural level with Easter, we believe in, because the tomb is empty, because he who was crucified lives, that there's newness of life. And so that's the great celebration of Easter, that light casts aside all darkness. So it's a feast of light, of life, of victory, which ultimately I think is a celebration of joy.
Isn't it foundational to all of our faiths in terms of that spirit of hope, of optimism, tomorrow? I've been to many Holocaust remembrance ceremonies. At the end, we always conclude with, I believe in the coming of the Messiah. That people in their last moments still said, I believe. And it's something that's endemic to all of us, and I think people need. I mean, if you don't have optimism, where do you go? What do you do?
Right.
I mean, why even look forward to another day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fruit of faith is hope. The belief in something allows you to trust that there's something yet to be revealed.
Father, why on a Sunday? I mean, the first Christians were Jewish Christians, the early Christians, and they were used to the Sabbath cycle. But instead of celebrating a Sabbath, we celebrate the next day after the Sabbath, the beginning of the week. Why is that traditionally?
Right. Well, obviously, there's kind of been a transfer, and that is true. The earliest Christians were Jewish for the most part in those first decades until the gospel reaches the kind of the other world, whether it be the Greek world or beyond. But the Sunday being the day of the resurrection, so the third day, and so that becomes the holy day for Christians.
Right. And it's a symbol of new beginning, right? Light over darkness, conquering death, and the first fruits of a new beginning. There's so much symbolism built into that.
Father Purpura, how did you make a decision to go into the priesthood?
Well, like most young people, desiring to understand purpose and meaning for life, that question kind of came to the forefront as a teenager, and was very caught up in my religious faith, or wrapped up in my religious faith. And it was this idea of priesthood, a certain attraction to the priesthood. But ultimately, I entered seminary, which is the school that prepares, the institution that prepares young men for the priesthood. Really, my desire was to go and discover it wouldn't be for me, and then I would go on with my life. I wouldn't have to live in regret.
That's well said. Was it always a sense of calling, or like you just said, it was a test to see if this is really, what you're supposed to be doing in life, or was there something deeper going on inside of you?
Yeah, I certainly experienced it. I continue to experience it as a calling. Something outside of myself. That this wasn't necessarily something I wanted, but I was conforming my desire, my will, to something that was outside of me. So definitely that sense of a calling, which is confirmed in many different ways, confirmed by people that identify it in you and then confirm it in the church. So there's kind of that coalescing of your own discernment with that of the people around you.
Right.
Father, we were together at a church in Bell Harbor.
Yes.
And you were the homiletician, the one who presented the message that day. You knew the family. You spoke of service. Talk about that, because, we've been to a number of funerals, and Reverend was just at a funeral the other day of someone who served NYPD and FDNY and military. There is something very unique when you meet these families. They always tell you he or she loved what they were doing. They wouldn't exchange it with any other position, regardless of the remuneration, regardless of any other rewards. This is what they wanted to do, even knowing the dangers ahead.
Well, in the particularly with the fire department and other departments and public servants, there's a big legacy factor that a young person grows up witnessing a parent or an uncle or a sibling and seeing their life in service of others. And I think most of us want to be part of something greater than ourselves. So I think that legacy piece is a huge influence in witnessing firsthand what it means to be a person of service, of sacrifice, and then wanting the young person, inspired to do the same with their own lives.
Did you ever stop and think about the sacrifice? I mean, you were sacrificing your life. There, no family, wife, children. That kind of a legacy would not be your reality. Did you go through a process of thinking that through?
Yeah, it was certainly part of discernment. Obviously, one of the most consequential aspects of the priesthood is the fact that we promise celibacy, that this permanent bond with the church, and that we will not get married. So obviously that has to be seriously considered. But I never looked at my life as a priest as being defined by what I'm sacrificing. I always was able to acknowledge what I'd been given because of my willingness to serve. And I try to, when I speak about a vocation, or I speak about, how someone might consider for their own life, I try to put the emphasis on that. I said, so many things that have been given to me beyond my imagination because of my vocation. So, really that's what I kind of focus more on.
What is
That is a homily. I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes. That's a homily right there. He didn't define his life by what he was going to sacrifice, but what he was going to receive, the blessing that would come. Beautiful.
Yeah.
What was the reaction of your parents, your family, when you made that decision? It
was interesting. I had quite a religious family. Both my parents had uncles who were priests. My father's sister was a religious sister. But even that being said, they thought I was too young at the time. I was only 19 when I entered seminary. And so they were pretty adamant in wanting to see me graduate university before I entered. But once they visited the seminary and kind of saw the young men that were there, from that moment forward, they've been nothing but supportive. And that's a blessing, because that's not a common experience.
I mentioned to you, my mom always said to me, I want you to become a doctor. That was her wish. And she would call me on Wednesdays when I was in the office at the synagogue. And why Wednesdays? Because historically that was the day off for doctors. And she said, had you listened to me, you wouldn't be sitting behind a desk there. You wouldn't be out there working. But, then she became very, very, not just accepting, but proud. And I've met a lot of parents of clergy, and they realize there is this psychic income. There's something you receive that is just irreplaceable. We often say you have to live life with purpose. And for many of us, there's no greater purpose than to do what we do and to be there for other people who need our strength and support.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to ask this question. We've got a few more minutes for the rest of the program. But given today's culture wars, given the confusion of conscience that we're seeing, where people are no longer just arguing or debating over values, but they're having trouble discerning right from wrong. Um, how important do you feel your voice is, your moral authority is in a society at a time like this?
I'd be naive to think that I have a very broad impact in greater society. And in many ways, I think what's happening now is there are becoming smaller communities of faith, but communities that are more fervent and are fully grasping the implications of faith. But I think within those communities, within my own community, I have a potential of being incredibly influential. You shape people's image of God. You shape image of their own life with God. And I get the impression more and more we're seeing a huge resurgence among young people, 20-year-olds, that they're coming looking for answers. They want clarity. They want to understand what the church teaches. So there's a tremendous potential with that.
How is it working with the chief chaplain of FDNY?
It's been a joy. It's been a joy.
I just want to make sure. So
I knew you would get something like that in the conversation.
No, but
you being the chief chaplain.
I got to tell you something. Father Purpura, there's a Father Fred Pellegrini. These are recent members of the chaplaincy. And Reverend Bernard, you're a chief chaplain in YPD. I'm inspired when I see these people who are ready to serve. If there's someone in the hospital or whatever, they're ready. No matter what else is going on in their lives, even if that day is assigned to them, but it could be a different day. They want to be there for someone else who is in desperate need of a chaplain, and also for the other guys, for the other members of FDNY. And I think, Father, we walk away at the end of all, we say, we've been enriched. We hope we've done something for others, but they have done much for us.
Sure.
So it's a great reward, and we're just very fortunate to have you with FDNY. I was telling Commissioner Cassano, who's a religious devotee of this program, and when he heard you were coming on, he says, "No, I listen all the time. I'll listen even more today." So just know
I'm happy to know that
you've inspired the former commissioner to listen even more today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you never know who's in that congregation that you inspire deeply, and they end up touching the lives of tens of thousands of people. You never know.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
That's real.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. Happy Easter. Thank you to all.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi.
Sacco and Felice, New York and New Jersey's premier attorneys at law. Their team brings decades of experience across a wide range of practice areas. Whatever life brings, they're your legal team. From everyday matters to complex cases, they've got you covered with the experience you need and the results you want. Because when life gets complicated, they make it simple. SaccoFelice.com. SACCOFILLAS.com. 2 C's, 2 L's.